This is Mrs. Bhatt, Director of English. This presentation is designed to give you information about your daughter's studies in English and guide you to support her. It's important to recognise that these two subjects are two distinct subjects that lead to two separate qualifications, and therefore the approach to revision for them will be quite different. For English language, students will complete both a fiction and a non-fiction paper, and in each one there is a reading and writing section. For reading, students will have to answer 4 reading question types that they will come to know very well based on their English lessons. These will be based on unseen material, both in the fiction paper, which has one source, and the non-fiction paper, which has 2 sources for them to compare. For the writing section of their exam paper, they will have to write their own fiction, either a descriptive or a narrative piece, they have the choice, and in the non-fiction exam, an argumentative piece. That's a compulsory question, one question where they have no choices to make. Let's look at how you can support your daughter with her revision. As I've said, it is important to recognise that GCSE English Language and GCSE English Literature are 2 separate and very distinct subjects, and therefore, approach to revision for them will naturally be different. Let's start with English Language. We've already attached revision materials to show my homework. On these materials, students have plenty of practice questions that they can work on independently. But here's some advice on how to go about this. For the lower mark questions, students should aim to have regular, ideally daily practice of those low mark questions, the 4 marker and the 8 marker. Also regular practice, perhaps not as much as daily, but 2 or 3 times a week, they should be practicing the high mark questions. Those are the 12, 16 and 20 marker questions. Your daughters have also been provided with knowledge organisers containing all the information they need to be successful and to understand the content. They can use these to devise their own tests and test themselves or their learning partners. In fact, you could test them using their questions, especially if they've created revision cards with the answers on the reverse side. It's a good idea to learn common misspellings that students often make in exams. For instance, the 3 different ways of spelling there and to. But they should also look at individual words that they themselves often misspell, and they can glance back at corrected work that their teachers have given them to make a list of words that they often have problems with. Some recommended websites are BBC Bitesize, Seneca Learning, and we have our own CHSG English channel on YouTube, as well as the famous Mr. Bruff. Something that would be helpful to do is to provide your daughter with newspapers or help her to access these newspaper websites on the internet. In particular, The Guardian, The Telegraph and The Times opinion sections are useful, and this is because the non-fiction sources in the exam often come from these 3 newspapers. If you wish to buy your daughter a revision guide, our recommendation is the Collins Revision Guide. It has a section on language and literature, but we think the language section is best for GCSE English Language revision. You can pick this up from WH Smith's and other bookstores, Amazon as well, for around £4. You should also remind your daughter to listen to the advice and written feedback from teachers, especially that feedback that's related to the PPE exams. We use those to, if you like, diagnose where the problem areas might be. Another thing that's useful for your daughter to do, especially towards the end of her revision period, is to pay attention to the time management plan that we give them. There is a certain amount of time that students should be spending on each question. And we find that even the best students come unstuck if they don't spend the right amount of time on each question, particularly as the high mark questions are towards the end of the exam papers. And if students spend too long on the low mark questions, they leave themselves with not enough time to pick up the marks on the high mark questions. So perhaps they should use the timers on their phones towards the end of their revision period to time themselves answering practice questions. Let's think about English literature now. For English literature, students will have to answer in essay form on the text they have studied for the course. They will receive explicit instruction on how to write academic essays in exam conditions during their English lessons. Something particular to this year, which you may have read about in the news or have seen on social media, is that Ofqual have introduced new proposals for the exams in 2021. The standard exam papers are being reconfigured in order to accommodate these proposals, and the adaptations that Ofqual have suggested should be made for COVID-19 challenges. We are awaiting advice from AQA regarding the new format of the exam papers, but we do know some things. First of all, Shakespeare, for your daughter, either Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet, is a compulsory question. She will be studying this after her November English language PPEs. Also compulsory will be the unseen poetry question. Your daughter will be prepared for this during the revision period after the Shakespeare unit of work. The 3 other texts have now been made optional. That means that the students can drop one of the 3 texts and they don't have to answer a question on all 3 in the exam. We plan to focus our revision on the texts that students learnt about before lockdown because they had the most consistent study experience with these texts. The first of these is an inspector course. This has been the most successful question for our school historically. The other text that they will be prepared to answer on is the question on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So how can you help your daughter to revise for English literature? After the language PPEs in November, we will attach English literature revision materials to Show My Homework. Students should have a planned programme of daily rereading a passage of one of the texts set for study. Rereading is a very important feature of English literature revision. They can make their own revision cards using postcard style revision cards with questions on the front and answers on the back. Or if you go on the internet, there are software memorisation programs. Ones that we particularly like are Anki and Memrise, and this will help them to learn quotations. Your daughter will have been provided with knowledge organisers for each of their texts. Again, they can use this to devise tests that they can test themselves on or test their learning partners on. In the revision materials attached to Show My Homework, students will have plenty of practice questions. They don't need to use them by doing an entire essay each time. Sometimes they can spend time just simply decoding the exam questions, really thinking about what the question is asking them to do. Sometimes they can simply plan an answer. Planning is a very important part of exam success. And other times they can actually go ahead and try to write the answer in timed conditions, keeping an eye on that clock. We would advise at the moment to avoid watching film versions of these texts, and that's because students often become confused and they will write about the film version rather than the text. If you wish to purchase study guides, we recommend for literature York study guides. There will be 3 in total, either Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet, and Inspector Calls, and Unseen Poetry. CGP also provide excellent revision question cards. The York study guides usually RRP for around $5.99, and the CGP revision cards sell for $7.99. Again, you should be able to purchase these from Amazon, WH Smith's and other bookstores. The same recommended websites for English language we also recommend for English literature. And again, we have our YouTube channel, CHSG English, which is continually updated with new videos. And your daughter should also listen to the advice and feedback from teachers related to the PPE exams, which will happen later in the year, usually around March, February or March. Again, timing is very, very important, even in the English literature exam. Students should make sure that they can complete exam questions in the time allocated, especially towards the end of their revision phase. This can be a very worrying time for students and parents, so we want to finish with some reasons to be cheerful. By this November, your daughter will have completed the GCSE English language course. By March, your daughter will have completed the GCSE English literature course. That doesn't sound too bad, does it? After each milestone, lessons will be completely revision-based, tackling the problem areas diagnosed from the PPEs, and with some of these taking on a more personalised nature, where your daughter may be working on tasks that are different, for instance, to her neighbour, who may need to work on different areas to her. And lastly, but very importantly, we are a successful, experienced department, a team of experts who know how to get your daughter her target grades. She, of course, needs to be prepared to work for it as well as wish for it. But rest assured that as English teachers, your daughter's success is important to us. If there's anything you wish to discuss regarding your daughter's progress in English, please don't hesitate to contact her English teacher or me, Mrs. Bhatt, Director of English. Thank you for listening, and I hope this was helpful to you.